What does it truly mean to follow Christ, even when the cost could be your very life? Today we uncover the story of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, a pastor who didn't just preach about faith. He lived it out in the face of evil, defying one of the most dangerous regimes of the 20th century. His life was a testament to costly grace, a grace that demands sacrifice, courage, and an unwavering stand for the truth. Stay with us as we journey through the life of a man who chose Christ over comfort, even when it meant his martyrdom. Background and early life. Dietrich Bonhoeffer was born in 1906 in Breslau, Germany, into a wealthy family that valued deep intellectual thought and high moral principles. His mother played a significant role in shaping his spiritual beliefs, which he held onto for the rest of his life. Unlike many others of his background, Dietrich chose to study theology instead of pursuing a more traditional, prestigious education. By the age of 21, he had earned his doctorate, focusing on the Christian community in his dissertation Sanctorum Communio. However, it was his time studying at Union Theological Seminary in New York that truly transformed him. As a musician, Dietrich was deeply moved by the vibrant worship at Haarlem's Abyssinian Baptist Church. It was in this house of praise that he witnessed the power of faith in action. For the first time, he saw sermons come to life as the congregation actively shared the good news of the gospel through acts of love. This experience gave him a clear understanding of how to live a Christian life through the lens of the social gospel movement. In this community, justice and equality were not just ideals, but a way of life. This experience ignited in him a fierce conviction. The church must stand against all forms of injustice. He carried this conviction back to Germany, where it fueled his support for the resistance against the Nazi regime. Theological Contributions. In 1937, Dietrich Bonhoeffer wrote what would become his most significant theological contribution of the 20th century, a work that continues to impact Christian believers today: The Cost of Discipleship. For many critics, this was not just a Christian book. It was a weapon, a tutorial on truly understanding how to follow Christ in a time when fear dominated human minds. The book's spirit urged believers to step out of their comfort zones, leave their churches and homes, and serve the needy while standing against the oppressive regime. Bonhoeffer introduced the concept of costly grace. This cost wasn't about money or commercial transactions. It was spiritual, emotional, and physical. Bonhoeffer spoke of a grace that demanded everything from a believer's life, a grace that called for sacrifice, action, and bearing the cross of discipleship, even if it meant walking the path of suffering and persecution. He also warned against the notion of cheap grace, a grace that, from a human standpoint, seemed easy and entitled, requiring nothing in return. Bonhoeffer saw this attitude as prevalent in the church's complacency in the face of Nazi terror. To him, this was the epitome of cheap grace, an easy, comfortable faith that turned a blind eye to the glaring evil in the cities, towns, and streets of his beloved Germany. Bonhoeffer revealed an uncomfortable truth to the church of his day. It was every Christian's sacred duty to stand against evil, no matter the cost. He believed that everyone, from head to toe, should unite to fight against this evil. But if no one else would stand, he was prepared to do so alone. This heroic conviction drove him to take increasingly bold and dangerous actions against the Nazi state. His ideas didn't stop with the cost of discipleship. Bonhoeffer's mind was a forge, constantly shaping new ideas and new challenges to the status quo. His teachings continued to evolve in works like Life Together and Ethics, where he delved deeper into the nature of Christian community and the moral obligations of believers. Theory versus action. This was the core message Bonhoeffer conveyed through his writings. For him, true Christian ethics could never be separated from the harsh realities of the world. It wasn't just about living a good life. It was about living a life that actively opposed evil and fought against the tide of injustice, even if that meant walking through the valley of the shadow of death. In Bonhoeffer's writings, passive discipleship is erased. Passive Christianity is dead, as reflected in James 2:17. Faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead. Bonhoeffer's words became like millions of tiny seeds sown into the hearts of his fellow believers and listeners. These seeds grew into trees of resistance, forming a forest of valor that stood against the tyranny of the Nazi storm. Costly grace was his concept, then his teaching, and ultimately it became the force that drove him to join the resistance against Hitler, a resistance that would lead to his martyrdom. As we take a brief pause, if you like the video, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Resistance against the Nazis. Bonhoeffer's commitment to costly grace led him to take actions far beyond those of most pastors of his time. While the German Christian movement sought to align Protestantism with Nazi ideology, Bonhoeffer joined the Confessing Church, a group that refused to join forces with evil. Dietrich became a key figure in promoting the mission and vision of this church. He boldly denounced the Nazis' anti-Semitism and urged Christians to stand against the moral corruption of the nation. But who would have thought that a pastor would become part of the German military intelligence agency? God provided this position, allowing him to avoid military service on the battlefield and instead perform a vital mission, saving the lives of innocent Jews by secretly aiding their escape to Switzerland. Bonhoeffer's belief in acting against evil also led him to participate in Operation Valkyrie, a carefully planned plot by German military officers to assassinate Hitler, which failed. Imprisonment and martyrdom. In April 1943, the Gestapo arrested Bonhoeffer for his involvement in Operation Valkyrie and for the crime of assisting Jews in escaping Nazi control. Initially imprisoned in Tegel military prison for 18 months, Bonhoeffer's Bible studies and teachings continued to reach others through his writings, which were later compiled as letters and papers from prison. The Christian Treasure reveals the maturity of his faith, his reflections on suffering, and his understanding of God's will during the final part of his life. Like the Apostle Paul, Bonhoeffer continued to minister to fellow prisoners and correspond with loved ones. He was later transferred to Flossenburg concentration camp, where he remained from February 1945 until his execution by hanging on April 9, 1945, just weeks before the camp was liberated and months before the war ended. Legacy and impact. Did Bonhoeffer ever imagine that his teachings would go beyond World War II, extend beyond Germany, defy the Nazis, and spread across the world, and eventually be translated into many languages? His legacy leaves a profound impact on any pastor or theology student who delves into even the most basic information about this man of faith. Some commentators believe that his personal testament, written during his days in prison, is among the most important works to read and analyze. Many credit Bonhoeffer with pushing the church beyond its traditional boundaries, compelling it to venture into the jungle of rampant sin, injustice, violence, and oppression, to bring the kingdom of heaven into the darkest areas of society. While we all acknowledge that it was Jesus who first took the good news of the gospel to the streets, it was Pastor Bonhoeffer who taught the modern church of the 20th century to do so during a world war, where the most infamous figure of the time, Adolf Hitler, was his compatriot. Bonhoeffer's teachings are a theological treasure for the 21st century as well, but history will particularly remember one defining characteristic of this man: his courage. Bonhoeffer could have confined himself to teaching his theories, or he could have simply shared his experiences in America and compiled them into a book, as so many others have done. But he went far beyond that. He lived out his teachings by putting his own life in great danger, both as a pastor confronting Nazi power and as a government official who, instead of spying on behalf of the agency, helped Jews escape death. In Bonhoeffer, theology and courage merged into one. His remarkable life continues to influence not only Bible school students, but also creators in the arts. A screenwriter has decided to compile Bonhoeffer's incredible stories into a script that has been adapted into a movie, set to be released in 2024. The title of the movie: Bonhoeffer, Pastor, Spy, Assassin. Beyond the film, Bonhoeffer's influence is evident across the internet. A simple search reveals that Bible schools and teachers around the world are publishing work on his legacy and offering new perspectives. Among the many websites that provide information about Bonhoeffer, notable ones include the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, Britannica.com, and the International Bonhoeffer Society. One study shows that searches for Dietrich Bonhoeffer reach up to 100,000 inquiries every month, indicating that people of all ages, races, and regions around the world are learning something new about his theology and courage every day. We know for certain that this man of God passionately desired to impact the lives of his listeners in his time. He believed that if they embraced his message, all of Germany would be transformed by the love of God through its local church. Yet he likely never imagined the impact of his message. Now that you've uncovered the incredible life of Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the pastor who defied Hitler, you're likely eager for more inspiring stories of faith and courage. Please subscribe and turn on the notification bell, where we share more stories just like this one.